What's going on, guys? My name is Sean Victor and welcome to your very first Autodesk Eagle tutorial. In this video we're going to be covering what a printed circuit board is, how they're useful, and what Autodesk Eagle really is and how it can help us start to create what we call printed circuit boards. So you're probably very familiar if you dabbled in with electrical engineering. uh, you've probably done some breadboarding at some point, whether that be like simple LEDs, and depending on the type of person you are, you may have very pretty circuits that are perfectly routed. You cut them perfectly to length, and oh, it looks beautiful. But the more complicated your designs get, the more wires you have going all over the place, and things can start to get messy really quickly. And when it comes to starting to actually test these platforms out, it can be kind of difficult to work around the breadboard and all of these jumper wires. A big issue you may come up having is that maybe one of these jumper wires comes out and the whole thing stops functioning the way it once was functioning, or if it even did function in the first place, something gets disconnected and it no longer works. That can be a pretty big problem that, as you're testing, you don't want to have to run into over and over again. And, if you have something that looks like this, and your system is this complicated, and just one wire gets disconnected, you don't know what wire it is, it will be a nightmare to debug this. So what we move on to, once you have a good idea that the breadboard works and you verified that the model works, you could jump over to starting to create some simple little printed circuit boards, kind of similar to this one. And the role of these boards are simply to just connect components together, using what we call printed circuit boards, or PCBs. Now these PCBs are different from the breadboards, in which instead of using the actual little holes in the breadboard, we lay out exactly which components we want to connect together. So let's say this is one component on our board, and then this is another component. We get to actually lay out we call these copper traces. And these copper traces are the substitutes for our jumper wires. And because this is integrated inside of like a board that looks similar to this, you don't have wires, loosely hanging off of your board. So there's no room for something to get disconnected as easily. And this is a much more robust platform that you can really test and not have to worry about small little things about disconnections maybe happening. So, that's what we're going to be focusing on in the rest of these tutorials, is starting to, transition from, systems that look very similar to this, and moving it over to start creating little board layouts like this. And, Autodesk Eagle is one of the top CAD softwares out there. And by CAD, I just mean it's helping us with, it's using computer-aided design, but it specializes in creating printed circuit boards with these PCBs. And what's so special about Eagle and all these other printed circuit board CAD softwares out there is that they're really just a large repository of components. Okay, so when I say these components, you're probably maybe you're used to seeing maybe little electrical symbols just like this. And Eagle is split up into two sections. It's split up into a schematic side and a board layout side, and we'll get into more details about what those two actually mean. But when we are designing in the schematic side, we only use what are known as symbols. Okay, so that's like the resistor is made up of this symbol, and your capacitor is made up of this symbol, and it's in here where we specify that the components and how they are connected to each other. So this is kind of an example of what a schematic might look like. Uh, just something, just indicating, these are all connected to ground, these are connected to some buttons, a resistor here, but it lays out the ground rules for, how our printed circuit board needs to make its connection. Okay, so now once you get the schematic side done, we then move over to the second part of our design phase, which is to start creating the board layout. Now the board layout is more so the physical, layout of what the PCB will actually look like. So we talk about, the PCBs looks like this, but in the schematic side, we're not actually designing this interface just yet. What we're actually defining is these individual connections. We aren't specifying how they're physically made, but we're just indicating that, like this lead, for example, is connected to this lead right here. Then it will be in the board layout. Our responsibility is to lay out the physical trace that will connect these two together. All right. So, like I was telling you before, in Eagle, it's just a huge repository, and in that repository, you have symbols, and then you have packages. So, a given like a package, for example, this resistor, the symbol may look like this, but the actual, look of a resistor may look like, something like that right there. Okay, and so a actual footprint or package is the physical layout of what that component looks like for the PCB side. Okay, so now that we understand what a symbol is and what a package is, we can kind of understand what what we call a device is. So a device is simply made up of actually three parts. Okay, so you can imagine this is the device category right here, but a single device is made up of three subsections. Okay, it's made up of a package. So let's say like my device, for example, is a microcontroller, and the microcontroller looks exactly like this in the symbol view, but in the physical view, it may look like this. Okay, and so the package, in the package category, I would have this as my package, but in the symbol category, I would have this symbol. Okay, now what Eagle does is it links both this package and the symbol, and it also brings it into a single device. So you can see if I click on this device, it shows me what the symbol looks like and what the correlating board view would look like if I were to bring this component in. Now there's a third category, which is this 3D package, and later on in our tutorials we're going to get into transitioning from Autodesk Eagle to Fusion 360 and how we can actually go about and start rendering some of the PCBs that we design. Okay, so these three sections are subsections of what a device is made up of. An Eagle is simply a repository of a bunch of different devices. All right? And that's all Eagle really is. It just boils down to that. All right? And so in the next tutorial, we'll get into actually the installation process of how to download Eagle and get started with actually interfacing with Eagle. All right? I'll see you in the next tutorial. See you later.